A roving raider gang of New California, the Khans have made a name for themselves over the 100+ years that we can see through the Fallout series. They started out the same as any Vault Dweller, Chosen One, Courier, or Sole Survivor did, in a vault, though they faced many hardships, most of which were brought on by themselves, or by the choices of the player. The Khans have survived up to the current post-apocalyptic wasteland we can explore. Even after being nearly wiped out 3 times, they persist. Being a tribe of the meanest and toughest SOBs around, it is no exaggeration with this group. Though labeled as the toughest around, this group had humble beginnings at Vault 15, though their humble nature lasted a whole 5 minutes upon exiting the vault. They actually shared Vault 15 with numerous people. However, not everyone in this vault agreed to go down the same path. The people who didn't join the Khans would go on to become the Vipers and Jackals. Though they have a place in the beginnings, the Khans are the ones whose history has been remembered very well in the Fallout universe. This is the bloody history and legacy of the Khans. The Khans, as their name suggests, modeled themselves after the ancient Mongolian Empire of Central Asia, of which they presumably found texts pertaining to in Vault 15. They adopted the lifestyle of a warrior tribe, raiding towns for loot, burning what they could not use, and capturing survivors as slaves. In the society they wanted to create, strength became a key attribute, often proven with hand-to-hand combat. In their view, the strong ruled and the weak perished. As a result of this, the Khans would also fight the other raider tribes, often clashing with warbands and large war parties in deadly skirmishes. One notable clash was with the Jackals, just 4 years after their emergence from Vault 15. The Khans were led by Death Hand, the first known leader, coming from the Vault 15 dwellers who founded the clan. The Khans brutalized the Jackals, forcing them to flee from New California towards the northeast in 2155. By the year 2161, the Khans had a new leader and were more organized in their escapades. Garl Deathhand, as we know him, is the son of Deathhand. Garl killed his father in an effort to usurp the position of leader because of his impatience and poor view of his father's leadership, all just before meeting the Vault Dweller. He was a violent man, and under his command, the warband became more or less a permanent element of the wasteland. They raided smaller settlements and communities such as Sadie Sands at the time, while trading with larger towns like Junktown and the Hub. Their original headquarters was based out of a ranch house in the middle of the Californian wastes. Their most prominent armor, the tire armor, sounds just like what its name implies. The warriors would fashion makeshift armor out of car tires found in the wasteland. This made them almost immune to blunt or slashing weapons, which was common for raiders in the area to use at the time. Otherwise, they excelled at melee combat, and for longer range engagements, they used bows and arrows, as well as small arms like 9mm or 38 special pistols. These were usually only carried by the higher-ups in the clan, however, as resources to maintain them were difficult to come by. Besides these weapons, armors, and the tactics they employed, the original Khans were really only equipped with the same armament other factions in the wasteland had at the time, because they stole them. The Khans of New California lasted only a total of 20 years before Garl's dream of domination grinded to a halt in 2161, when they kidnapped a woman named Tandy. Tandy and her actions would have unimaginable ramifications at the time, as she would go on to become the founder and second president of the New California Republic. The Tandy of the present, however, was a leader of Shady Sands upon being kidnapped. This ultimately drew the attention of the Vault Dweller, who came to the settlement and slaughtered the raiders. With the Jackals driven out by the Khans, and the Khans in turn being dealt with by the Vault Dweller, the stability that followed allowed the New California Republic to emerge. However, their story would not end here. The Vault Dweller did not kill everyone. Darien, son of Garl Deathhand and grandson of Deathhand, escaped the Vault Dweller's wrath. This sole survivor would go on to reform the Khans. Suffering from survivor's guilt and planning revenge against Tandy, he would create a new faction, a stronger faction, with most of the same ideals as the old one. His new faction would eventually re-challenge Tandy, while she was the sitting president over the fledgling NCR, and they would do this under the name the New Khans. The new Khans, started by Darien, was not one for open conflict in its infancy. Consisting of only Darien at the start, he decided to hide rather than fight all out. Having vowed to take revenge on Tandy and the Vault Dweller, Darien bolstered his numbers using mercenaries and vagrants. His plan for revenge eventually consumed him, turning into an obsession before he fell prey to overwhelming paranoia. Sometime before 2241, Darien returned to the ruins of Vault 15 and started building himself up again. Darien eventually gained favor from the squatters who lived around Vault 15. He would go on to use them as a force to keep the NCR at bay. He instructed the squatters to set up a smokescreen around the vault. In exchange for this, he promised to return the vault into perfect working order. These squatters would deter the NCR attempts to retake the vault, while the mercenaries would raid Republic caravans that passed through the vicinity. Darien needed to keep the appearance of a functioning bunker, and he needed the supplies to do so. These supplies would in turn go towards the squatters to keep them around, as Darius had water, food, and guns to keep them in check. This also hinged on another lie that Darius had told the squatters. You see, the squatters believed that the vault was full of vault dwellers, not raiders. During this time, he also managed to plant a spy in the NCR Congress, giving him near perfect intel on NCR military movements and when and where they planned to attack. At this point, he was able to get part of the vault functioning again, as in a single terminal able to use holodisks. They were never able to get the electrical systems back online and used torches to light the vault's corridors. Alongside, they had advanced medical treatment available via a captive, Dr. Jones, who was kidnapped while leaving Vault City to go on vacation. Darius also differed greatly from his late father, Garl Deathhand, in an idyllic sense, but they seemed to be on the same moral compass. The new Khans did not value strength as it once did. Darius himself wields a flamer, while his personal guards utilize assault rifles, as well as spiked knuckles and power fists, with the average new Khan carrying anything from throwing knives to a Desert Eagle 44 to even plasma grenades. This was in a way abandoning the Khan's importance of individual strength and instead relying on trickery and firepower to win fights. Later in the year 2241, the now President Tandy of the NCR would hire the Chosen One, a descendant of the Vault 13 dwellers. She retells the Chosen One about her youth and the Vault Dweller.
Figures. Well, I was pretty young when we met. There was a gang of raiders, the Khans, who had gotten hold of me. Things were looking pretty bad when all of a sudden this stranger shows up and rescues me. Your Vault Dweller.
She would task the Chosen One with retrieving some computer parts from Vault 15, where Darien had encamped himself, now surrounded by vagrants, mercenaries, and squatters. After the decisions of the Chosen One, Darien would be killed and the computer parts would be retrieved, with the squatters brokering a peace deal through the Chosen One. The squatters would give access to the vault to the NCR, and they would be annexed, as well as given education and supplies necessary to survive. Darius, a descendant of the original Khan leader, would perish here. However, this is not the end of the Khan story. Though Darius's warband of mercenaries was the governing band of the Khans, it was not the only one. Despite the destruction of the new Khans at the hands of the Chosen One, the tribe's history continued into the future. Over the next few decades, the fragmented Khans gradually conglomerated back into a single group, no longer small raiding bands. This time, the newly anointed Great Khans became a unified tribe once more under the leadership of Papa Khan, who led an exodus out of New California and into the Mojave wasteland in Nevada. The third incarnation of the Khans are the only true organized bands of raiders in the Mojave. Both men and women can hold their own in a fight, whether in a brawl or a shootout. At this point, however, they were but a shadow of their former selves. Both their numbers and morale were ravaged by a series of massacres and displacements, until Papa Khan guided the tribe into Nevada. Papa Khan led his Khans in a similar manner to Garl Deathhand, using advisors to inform decisions for the good of the tribe, while still making final decisions himself. Unlike Garl, however, Papa is willing to accept criticism of his leadership, and does not punish his followers for speaking out against him and expressing different opinions. Initiation into the Khans was also close to the vision set out by the original Vault 15 dwellers. In order to join the Khans, one must pass a series of initiation rituals. This same ritual is required for younger Khans who are coming of age. All of these rituals culminate in a beating that lasts for a minute. A number of Khans would surround the initiate and proceed to beat them for the full minute. If the initiate calls for mercy, they are disqualified, but if they survive, they are permitted to become a fully fledged Khan, with the option to choose a new name. These rituals were meant to demonstrate the toughness of each Khan, and this process would often leave scars, a point of pride for everyone who makes it through them. After arriving in Nevada, the great Khans were met by the followers of the Apocalypse, who were already present in the Mojave. The followers reached out to teach the Khans basic science, chemistry, reading, and writing skills, hoping the Khans would use this knowledge to sustain themselves. The followers wanted to inspire them to create medicine and grow crops more effectively. However, this only enabled the Khans to turn a profit in the drug-running industry. Julie Farkas speaks about them when asked.
The Great Khans. Oh, you mean those raiders that used to clash with the Vegas tribes? Yes, some years back we taught them reading, writing, basic science. We hoped they would use it to make medical supplies, but they turned to drugs.
Drugs were not a new concept to the Khans, as they already had the knowledge on how to use plants and herbs to make mind-altering substances. All that the followers of the Apocalypse achieved was to increase the availability of the already popular drugs within the Khans. Still, some of the chems produced by the Khans went towards trading with others, namely with the Fiends, a group of raiders known for their cannibalism, as well as the West Side addicts living around the New Vegas Strip. Trading kept the Khans stocked on much-needed supplies for the tribe. Papa Khan was a man of tradition, and brought back with him the strong pride and martial prowess to the Khans. Mixed with his governing skills and the know-how provided by the followers, the Great Khans were undoubtedly the single most organized tribe in the Mojave Wasteland, and for a time were effectively its rulers. Their dominance would not last, however. When Robert House noticed NCR scouts at the Hoover Dam in 2274, he made his move to take over the New Vegas Strip and go on to form the Three Families. One of the families, the Omertas in particular, would be at war with the Khans. When Mr. House took over the Strip, he provided the families with weapons, ammunition, medicine, and other necessities that would allow the Omertas to outnumber and outgun the Khans. They were defeated, first driven back into northern Vegas, then pushed completely out of Vegas, forcing them to settle at Bitter Springs. Over the next year, the new California Republic would arrive in the Mojave with force. The Khans had an old tradition, one that Papa Khan remembered from before their exodus. From the moment that the NCR showed up in the Mojave, the Khans would raid their caravans, towns, and camps, still considering them easy prey from the old days of the new Khans. In 2278, however, the situation would change dramatically. After the First Battle of Hoover Dam, the defeat of the Legion led by Joshua Graham, and the Brotherhood of Steel, the NCR stood virtually unopposed in the Mojave. The Great Khans continued their raids, however, and eventually kidnapped 4 unnamed high-profile soldiers, affecting people with large connections in the new California Republic. The NCR would finally retaliate in an act that would become known as the Bitter Springs Massacre. The NCR mounted an assault on the Khans' home base of Bitter Springs after following them back to the town. When the Khans spotted the main force of the NCR approaching, they evacuated the children, the elderly, and the ill through their only escape, Red Pass. NCR 1st Recon was positioned at the end of the canyon, however, and they had been given orders to fire down the pass until they ran out of ammunition. Papa Khan talks about Bitter Springs.
When the NCR came to the Mojave, we thought they would be easy pickings. We raided their caravans, their towns, their camps. They couldn't stop us. At least that's what we thought. They tracked us to Bitter Springs and surrounded us. When our children, our sick and old, fled through a nearby pass, the NCR gunned them down.
If you have Boone with you when visiting Red Pass, he recalls,
"This is the place. We got sent from Camp Gulf looking for some cons who'd been making trouble with one of our settlements. I guess one of the settlers was connected because we sent everything we had. We figured this was a gang hideout, but they'd led us to their home. Canyon 37. That's what the NCR calls the pass down there. It was the cons' only escape, so we set up here to guard it while the main force attacked from the front. Standing orders were to shoot on sight.
After the tragedy, the great cons who survived Bitter Springs were given permission by the NCR military authorities to resettle at Red Rock Canyon without interference. In an effort to create a source of income, the cons established a drug lab in the desolate gorges. By 2281, drugs manufactured in this lab formed the foundation of their economy, which they used to trade for much-needed necessities that they could not get in the inhospitable canyon. Food did not grow there, barely any water could be dug up, and nothing else of note even presented itself when they first moved there. Eventually, their drug business had destroyed whatever goodwill they had previously with the followers, as their drugs had made their way to numerous villages west of Vegas. Thanks to their knowledge of the land, making it easy to deliver packages and escape the NCR interference, the NCR was not willing to deal with the problem directly. An assault on Red Rock Canyon would be expensive in terms of caps and men for both sides. There were remnants of the cons that remained outside the canyon, who waged a desperate guerrilla war against the Republic, further straining the cons' supplies. Little time had passed before the easy access of narcotics had led many of the cons into becoming addicts, trying to cope with the trauma of Bitter Springs through alcohol and hard drugs. Red Rock Canyon, already long barren before they arrived, became a drug den filled with the smell of alcohol and drug fumes. People even joked about the flies buzzing around being high on something or another. The steady stream of narcotics turned dozens of villages out west into junkie dens, on top of the chaos caused by the cons' most valuable customers, the fiends. Such an existence for the people was intolerable to many, but most importantly, Papa Con himself could not stand it. He wanted to leave behind a strong legacy. All of these circumstances were taken advantage of by another major faction in the Mojave, Caesar's Legion. Caesar sent a frumentari, Carl, to act as an ambassador to the cons under the veil of seeking great warriors. With promises of land, wealth, and revenge against the NCR, Papa Con agreed to the alliance almost immediately, declaring that the cons would march to help Caesar when the time came for the Second Battle of Hoover Dam. Carl appeased the advisors of Papa Con with promises of holding positions of power within the Legion. However, in reality, the Legion does not intend to keep any of the promises made, considering the cons merely another tribe to conquer and assimilate into their ranks. Carl himself despises the great cons, considering them unworthy of the Legion, and subpar warriors at best. He even thinks that the cons would have to be decimated first in order to make them obey. Perhaps he was planning on putting them in the front line in the Second Battle of Hoover Dam. Either way, the cons remain oblivious, not knowing any other way to move forward. Their dwindling numbers and imminent approach of the NCR led them to believe in the dream of becoming Caesar's elite cohorts, using the Legion as a vehicle to move towards the destruction of the new California Republic in the Mojave. All of this proves too tempting, making the cons blind to the reality of what joining the Legion really entails. The Courier has many avenues they can take alongside the cons to deal with the current predicament. You have the option to let the cons go along with Caesar's plan. You can convince them otherwise to go on their own path out of the Mojave onto a new story for the cons, or you can just murder everyone. There are several outcomes for the great cons that range from them breaking their alliance with Caesar and starting anew, to complete assimilation into the Legion, forever losing their tribal identity. And this concludes the known legacy of the cons, from their small start out of Vault 15 to their struggles within the Mojave. The cons have made their mark on the western wastelands, mostly with drugs. What choices did you make while interacting with the different generations of the cons? Did you become their savior, or did you lead them to ruin? What era of the cons is your favorite? And do you want to see the cons return to the Fallout franchise in the future? Let me know down in the comments below. And again, I could not have made it this far without all of you. Thank you for your support. And as always, thank you for watching, and please like and subscribe for more content.